A huge task for Somalia's first government in 20 years. As the new cabinet is formed, we ask how they can tackle famine, corruption and terror. Also on today's program, flagging up a controversy why raising the Kurdish banner in northern Iraq is proving so contentious. And is this mission accomplished? Turkey brings an end to its military operation in northern Syria. I'm Imran Garda, and this is the Newsmakers. It's been an unusually long time coming, but after 2 decades without a functioning leadership, Somalia has finally established a new government. The Prime Minister's cabinet has been sworn in Mogadishu, but not before weeks of delays, political infighting and accusations of corruption. They now face the monumental task of leading what may be one of the most difficult territories in the world to govern, tackling drought, famine and now cholera, as well as the continued threat from Al-Shabaab. They're all on the to-do list. Today's Newsmaker is Somalia's new government, as we ask how they plan to confront the challenges ahead.
After a lengthy electoral process, Somalia now has a new government. Anti-corruption campaigner and former Prime Minister Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed was elected president by his parliamentary peers last month. He has appointed Hassan Ali Kari as Prime Minister. And on Wednesday, Somalia's new 26-member cabinet was approved. This is only the second smooth transition of power in Somalia since 1960. For many, this is a cause for celebration. But the new government faces extreme challenges. Somalia is plagued by continuing drought, and the government has declared it a national disaster. Lack of food and clean water is leading to outbreaks of diseases like cholera, and the UN is warning the country is facing famine. But that's not the only threat Somalia faces.
We are determined to defeat this terrorist group. I can confidently say that Al-Shabaab, with the courage and sacrifice of Somali National Army and AMSOM troops, have been weakening substantially.
Although African Union mission and Somalia forces have pushed Al-Shabaab out of large parts of the country, it's far from gone. The group has carried out several terror attacks across the country and in the capital this year, including a car bomb attack last week that killed at least 5 people. But security isn't the only threat to stability, and Somalia's government will have to deal with balancing ethnic power sharing. The so-called 4.5 formula allocates 1 in 4 seats to each of the major clans in Somalia and half of 1 seat to minority clans. Critics argue the system puts historically marginalised clans at a further disadvantage and warn it could deepen ethnic divisions. As Somalia transitions to this new government, the changes and challenges it faces are immense. Will the government be able to ensure Somalis overcome this together? Yvette McCullough, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from Mogadishu by Abdi Ainti. He's the Somali Minister of Planning and International Cooperation. And from Brussels, Mohammed Garan, a senior humanitarian journalist. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Minister Ainti, let me begin with you. And first of all, of course, our condolences to the people of Somalia. It's a terrible situation right now. More than 6 million people need humanitarian aid. People are starving. My question to you is the government doing all it can to make the situation better?
It is trying its best. It's not the easiest condition on the ground. We have had a very tough drought that could potentially trigger a famine, as we've had 5 years ago. And the cyclical drought has been wreaking havoc across the country. The means of the government to respond to all of this is very limited at this stage, but it's doing everything it can. Most importantly, the Somali public is responding in the best way it can by mobilizing resources and and other means, and responding from the diaspora as well. So there is a fairly extensive campaign going on, and the government is leading the charge here. But we must understand that a country the size of Texas, with about 18 regions, with which most of the regions are now impacted by the drought, things are not easy here.
Mohammed Garan, the government is trying its best. I mean, a drought doesn't have to become a famine. People don't have to die. Do you accept and agree that the government is trying its best, or do you think it can do more?
No, I don't accept it, because the Minister of Planning, the previous government, that he was a member of cabinet, was watching people dying in all provinces. We remember that elections were organized amid of droughts. And while Somali people were dying, the minister himself spearheaded the committee that has planned the inauguration of the new president, which almost $1 million was spent on the delegations coming from the region, all these things. I don't think that the government did its best, neither this government nor the previous government. So what is now going on in Somalia could have been prevented. I know everything can be, so in this region where Somalia is located is prone to droughts. We see episodes of droughts coming back and again and again. So the Minister of Planning, his ministry should have been doing a lot to prevent the drought to gradually become famine.
Okay, Minister Ainti, could you have done more? Could you have foreseen this? Could you have spent the money maybe better? Because that's one of the criticisms from Mohammed.
Well, I think with all due respect, it's easy to sit in the comfortable places like Brussels and actually assign blame and not appreciate the extent to which this drought is impacting the country. This is a government whose annual revenue is no more than $250 million, and the response amount that we need right now exceeds $4 billion. So when you put this in context, you understand how gigantic this drought is and how gigantic the problem is. He raised the point of the inauguration ceremony for the new president. True, I was chairing the committee, and we actually didn't spend, we spent 90% less than what he just said. So it is important to be sticking to the facts. I think, yes, we could do more without a doubt, but we also need to understand the complexity of the issue and the limitations of the capacity on the ground across Somalia.
Okay, Mohammed, are you taking cheap shots? Are you failing to recognize the context within which Minister Ainti is operating?
I know the situation is enormous. It is beyond the control of Somali government. It's beyond the control of the Somali diaspora, beyond the control of the regional capacity, because we see a full-blown drought in all over the region. That's really true. But I don't agree with Minister Ainti about his point that amid of Somali mothers and children suffering in the drought in the regions worst hit, including Banadir, where Mogadishu is located. So organizing an election, organizing an inauguration ceremony, which thousands of dollars.
Sure, and okay, Mohammed, I want to move on now. Sure, absolutely, and you made that point because he's saying they spent 90% less than that. I want to move on, and I want to connect the security situation to this. And Abdi, I want to pose this to you. So there was this massive suicide car bomb when the president was being sworn in. Al-Shabaab is massively and brazenly attacking in the heart of Mogadishu. Just hours ago, there were mortar rounds fired at the presidential palace. These are conducted by Shabaab. On the other hand, the drought is so bad that we're hearing that the government has to possibly work with Shabaab to keep people alive. Does the government have to work with them?
Well, here's the situation. Al-Shabaab is actually partially responsible for the drought and also for the potential famine because they have erected so many dozens of roadblocks across the key roads that go into the regions across the country. And that they have done the same thing 5 years ago in 2011 or 6 years ago when we lost 268,000 of our people to that famine. And so our major responsibility lies with a terrorist group that claims to be doing good for Somalia, but is starving its own people at the same time. Now, that's not to say that the government doesn't shoulder responsibility. Of course we do. We are the government of the land. However, now new government is taking over. And in fact, in a few days' time, I'm transferring my responsibility to a colleague who is taking over the responsibility. And they're going to have to deal with this massive problem with an annual revenue of $220 million, $230 million, when what we need is over $4 billion.
Minister, let me ask you about working with al-Shabaab, because again, these are not my words. This is not my suggestion. Michael Keating, the special representative of the UN Secretary General in Somalia, said, and I quote him, "The drought is highlighting the need to engage with al-Shabaab because Shabaab controls areas where large numbers of people live." So let me ask you quite directly, will the government work with al-Shabaab? Will it engage with al-Shabaab, even though you blame al-Shabaab for exacerbating the situation?
Well, the reality here is that, yes, al-Shabaab does control important part of the country, important regions, and I think the government is prepared to do whatever it takes to make sure that people's lives are saved. But I don't believe that we have a partner with al-Shabaab when it comes to saving the lives of the Somali people, when they're actually blowing up people's lives on a daily basis.
Mohammed, does that help you understand some of the complexities as they are trying to thread the needle between keeping people alive, feeding people, preventing famine, but also dealing with the security situation? Do you have some sympathy for the government's perspective there?
Not at all, not at all. We know that al-Shabaab has been weakened for the past few years. And I think the government did not take the opportunity to win the hearts of minds of the Somalians themselves. We have AMISOM troops coming from all over most of the region, and they are stationed in the provinces in the south of Somalia. And they are not doing anything about the drought. They are not helping the people. They are not taking the convoy of food to reach the places where the people really need the food. These troops should have been taking a very good role together with the government to lead, to reach food to the areas where food is mostly needed. If I take as an example, we see a town in the south called Sako, and another town nearby called Buale in the middle Juba province. These places are under control of al-Shabaab. The government is nearby 100 kilometers away in Bardere, which is in Gedo province. They should have moved to reach the people who need food aid. So we see that the government is just not taking its own responsibility to lead the food convoy to reach the people.
Okay, Minister Ainti, final question for you. Lots of people want to get involved. They want to help. We've seen celebrities get involved. There's a Turkish Airlines campaign. The Turkish government's involved. Many people want to help. How can they be convinced that that aid will go to the people who need it most and it won't go into the wrong hands? How can they be absolutely sure?
Well, first of all, it's important to understand that we now have a National Drought Committee comprised mostly of non-government officials led by religious scholars who have a reputation for ensuring that food aid and other assistance reaches to the right people, but also includes members of youth, women's groups, and other individuals who are trusted within the population. And the reason why we have set up the National Drought Committee and filled it with people who are not in government is to instill trust and confidence in people who are actually willing to assist Somalia. And so, yes, our Prime Minister now leads the effort, but it is in the hands of the National Drought Committee, who are people who are very well known, who have done a very good job over the past few weeks and months to ensure that food aid and other assistance reaches across the country. Look, this is no time to blame each other. It is time to cooperate and collaborate to ensure that we save people's lives as urgently as possible.
Minister AlBayati and Mohammed Garan, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to both of you. Thank you very much for joining us. We all know that flags can be powerful symbols. It's why there's a major problem right now in northern Iraq. The provincial government in Kirkuk has raised the Kurdish flag over local government buildings. The problem is, Kurds are not the only ethnic group there. Arabs and Turkmens are outraged and have been protesting the decision. They say they'll appeal to the central government in Baghdad, which says flying the flag violates the constitution. Shoaib Hassan explains.
Today we decided to raise the Kurdish flag along with the Iraqi flag. It's an historic day.
But it's also controversial, and others saw no reason to celebrate seeing the Kurdish flag fly over the Iraqi province of Kirkuk. These Turkmen students are protesting the move. They say they will remain on the streets until the banner is brought down. Opposition politicians in the Kirkuk Provincial Council agree.
The Arab and Turkmen blocs have rejected the decision and walked out of the session and boycotted it. We are waiting for the central government to take steps.
Kirkuk lies just outside the Kurdish Autonomous Region, and it's important because of its oil fields. With 1 million barrel a day output, they are the largest in northern Iraq. Kurdish forces seized them in 2014 when the Iraqi army abandoned its positions to a Daesh onslaught. Iraq's government first wanted them returned. It later agreed to share the revenues, but Iraq's Vice President Osama al-Najafi now says it's unwilling to share its national unity. Another country alarmed is Turkey. It has already expressed concerns that the Kurds are discriminating against the Turkmen of Kirkuk. Ankara is also concerned the move will embolden the PKK terror group in Iraq, as its YPG branch in Syria continues to gain strength from US support. Shoaib Hassan, the Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from Baghdad is Dr. Ali Akram AlBayati. He's the president of the Turkmen Rescue Foundation. They're an NGO with a focus on defending the rights of Turkmen. Thanks so much for joining us, sir. The flag raising by the governor, was that a provocation?
Let us focus on some historical points about Kirkuk. As we know, if you want to know about the history of any city, you must return back to the ancient graves or tombs or the names of the neighborhoods of the city, and this is depended or adopted even by UN. If we focus on Kirkuk, we can see easily that the ancient graves in Kirkuk are for Turkmen. For example, grave also of Sultan Saki in Tisin city, and in Musalla, and in Konya, and Turkalan. All these ancient tombs are for Turkmen, as well as the names of the old neighborhoods of Kirkuk again are Turkmen neighborhoods. For example, Turkalan, Konya, Musalla, and some districts which is considered part of Kirkuk, including Taza Khurmato, Tawuk, and Altun Kopri. Of course, raising of flag is against Iraqi constitution. As we know, Kirkuk considered part of disputed territories in the Iraqi constitution, and this issue not solved till now. The UN and the Iraqi parliament asked and advised for many occasions to prepare for an election or for the local council in Kirkuk, but the problem that the control of the city by certain Kurdish party, which is mainly PKK party, preventing any steps to apply democracy in Kirkuk. As we know, the local council or the provincial council in Kirkuk is not legal. They are formed and established at 2003 by the Alliance Authority or Invasion Authority at that time, and they divided the council according to ethnic basis, and they are still present for 14 years, and they are not legal. And this decision exactly not legal and it is against Iraqi constitution.
Okay, let me try to pose to you what their thinking is from among those who support the flags going up over the local buildings, the Kurdish flags. They say the Peshmerga saved Kirkuk, and at the moment they say the Kurds are fighting Daesh, and the Kurds have saved Kirkuk from Daesh. That's why the momentum is with them, and that's why they believe that Kirkuk must join the KRG. That's their thinking. Does any of that sound reasonable to you?
I think this attempt and what happened last few days was just to direct the tension between Kurdish parties toward another side. As we know, there is tension inside Kirkuk and in all Kurdistan or KRG. They want to create another tension between Kurds and other ethnic group. For their claiming, I think they failed, for example, in protecting Kirkuk. We can remember, for example, how Bashir village, which is a Turkmen village, and it is a part of Kirkuk, it is 20 kilometers away from Kirkuk to the western part of Kirkuk. It have been invaded by Daesh, and there was a massacre in Kirkuk against Turkmen as they abducted and raped and killed around 9 women and ladies, and even they burned them and suspended them on electricity poles. Again, Hawija also till now is under control of Daesh. Before few months exactly, we can remember how Daesh invaded Kirkuk, and easily within few hours they controlled the central part of Kirkuk. I think they failed to protect Kirkuk, and again this tension will give a way for Daesh to enter Kirkuk and invade and do some problems against the civilians in Kirkuk.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you make. Now, given the provocation and the response with the protests from the Turkmens and the protests from Arabs, people are talking again about Article 140, the possibility of a referendum on Kirkuk's future. This was something that was tabled many years ago, but it hasn't been done. Is it maybe time just to have that referendum about Kirkuk's future so that the people can decide once and for all where it wants to be and which government it wants to be under?
Of course, this should be done. As I mentioned, Kirkuk is part of disputed territories, and this article in the constitution made the Iraqi government away from Kirkuk and other territories, for example, Tuzhurmatu, and gave away for the PUK or the Kurds to extend more. I think the best way today to, as the UN and Parliament advised and asked for many occasions to prepare for an election, to get a legal provincial council, and then to decide the fate of Kirkuk. As we know, the governor himself, Dr. Najmuddin, have a project about creation of new region in Kirkuk, an isolated region, and it will be just like a new region for the Kurds again, and it will be a new region for just PUK. So deciding the fate of Kirkuk in this situation is very dangerous, and we can remember in Tuzhurmatu, for example, how the continuous pressure against the civilian and the people created a military spark. Today there is the Kurds attacked or assaulted civilian in Tuzhurmatu, which is just 80 kilometers to the south of Kirkuk, for 2 occasions, at October 2015 and March 2016, by massive weapons and heavy weapons, and the rejection was military. And today there is a loss of their control and power in Tuzhurmatu. I think staying in this attitude will create again a military reaction from the people of Kirkuk, whether they are Turkmen or Arabs, and even if they decided to involve Kirkuk to KRG or to a new project or region without agreement from the other nations or ethnic groups, will make the problem and conflict continue, and will affect, of course, for the stability of Iraq in general and the stability of the region.
Tense situation in Kirkuk at the moment. Ali Akram AlBayati, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Turkey has declared that Operation Euphrates Shield is over. The 7-month military operation oversaw the capture of several towns from Daesh in northern Syria. Take a look.
We have made it absolutely clear to the elements that were part of the Syrian Democratic Forces, the YPG that participated, that they must move back across the river.
Fırat Kalkanı bitmiştir. Bundan sonra ihtiyaç olması halinde yapılabilecek bir hareketin artık başka bir isimle anılacak.
So what are the Turkish military's next steps in Syria? We'll have more next week. That's all for this edition of the Newsmakers with me, Imran Gata. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.